After the sacking, the briefing wars. Nadhim Zahawi overnight let it be known he felt wronged by Rishi Sunak. The Prime Minister's independent advisor on ethics only spoke to him once. He'd been more open about his tax affairs than Number 10 suggested. Number 10 hit back, saying that Nadhim Zahawi, when he was appointed to the Treasury last July, was still claiming he was dealing with HMRC queries, not a full-blown investigation. Rishi Sunak, answering media questions...
Morning, everyone. How are you? Good.
...emphasised the speed and decisiveness of his actions, sacking Nadhim Zahawi.
When all these questions started coming to light about Nadhim Zahawi, I asked the independent advisor to get to the bottom of it and to provide me with the facts. And then on the basis of the facts, which he did relatively quickly over the course of last week, I was able to make a very quick decision that it was no longer appropriate for Nadhim Zahawi to continue in government, and that's why he's no longer there. That's what I've done. It relates to things that happened well before I was Prime Minister, so unfortunately I can't change what happened in the past. What you can hold me accountable for is, what did you do about it? What I did as soon as I knew about the situation was appoint somebody independent, looked at it, got the advice, and then acted pretty decisively.
There's some dispute over Nadhim Zahawi's claim that he was only spoken to once and for 30 minutes by the ethics advisor. Number 10 says Rishi Sunak didn't proactively raise the reports there had been around Nadhim Zahawi's tax affairs when he appointed him Conservative Party chairman. For some Tories, it all proves the system of vetting new ministers needs an overhaul.
Appointing ministers can't be the sort of civil service equivalent of who am I, where you're only answering the questions that you're asked. If that information is not being collected in a way that is helpful to prime ministers of the day, then clearly that needs changing.
Any other questions from up there?
Rishi Sunak will now be bracing himself for more headlines about Nadhim Zahawi's penalty from the HMRC. In Mr Zahawi's constituency of Stratford-upon-Avon, signs these stories are hurting him and his party.
I am a Conservative person, but I think he should have retired, yes.
It doesn't seem fair that he just gets a fine and gets to get away with it. I think he should have his whip position removed. And like she said, I think also he should be convinced that he should start thinking about stepping down.
I'm Conservative, but at the moment, no. I think they've fallen apart.
I'm getting waved at. This better be the last one, right? OK, fine.
This afternoon, another investigation, launched at the same time as the Nadhim Zahawi one, was paused. Inquiry into the role of former banker Richard Sharp in getting Boris Johnson access to a loan just before Richard Sharp was appointed by the government as chairman of the BBC. William Shawcross, Commissioner for Public Appointments, has announced he's pulling out of leading the investigation into whether that appointment was conducted properly, because he actually knows Mr Sharp. For some, it'll add to the image of cosy relationships at the top of politics. William Shawcross's daughter happens to be Director of Policy at Number 10 for Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak said today that he can't be held responsible for events that happened before he got to Number 10. But that doesn't mean those events can't carry on generating damaging headlines that hurt him politically and repeatedly. Gary Gibbon, Channel 4 News, Westminster.
Well, earlier I spoke to backbench Tory MP Laura Farris. I began by asking whether Nadhim Zahawi should have an even harsher punishment by having the Conservative whip removed.
No, I think the matter has been resolved. It was an issue of the ministerial code. It's been investigated, a report was published, and he's had a sanction applied.
Although one could argue that he's also misled Parliament with his declarations, and therefore perhaps he broke the parliamentary code as well.
Well, look, I think the findings of Sir Laurie Magnus are pretty clear and unequivocal. I accept that. But the sanction that gets applied to ministers when that kind of thing happens is, dismissal, or they resign in advance, and that's happened here.
Do we know who might replace Nadhim Zahawi as chairman of the party?
No, I don't.
Are you running out of people for these top jobs?
No, I don't think we are at all. I mean, I think it is really important to get the decision right, and it's, there's always a bit of pressure to make a decision overnight, but there are different considerations to kind of throw into the balance, and I think it is a really important one to get right, because it's kind of the captain of the ship on a national level, and so I understand why the Prime Minister might be taking his time.
I mean, I can see that Rishi Sunak prides himself on being a man of process. He's a details guy, and that's why he wanted to see the process follow through. But
Yeah.
The ministers serve at his pleasure. I mean, he can sack them whenever he likes. And I wonder whether on some occasions, and the case of Nadhim Zahawi would be one, following his gut instincts, if he has them on this matter, might have been politically more savvy.
Listen, Matt, I think there is always a temptation, always when the political pressure is mounting, to act quickly. But it is part of any fair employment procedure that you are entitled to have the matter concerned properly investigated. I think people do understandably, wonder when an investigation is launched whether it's going to take months and lead nowhere. But in this case, it was dealt with in 6 days. Sir Laurie Magnus sent his letter to the Prime Minister on Sunday morning, and within an hour the decision was reached. And actually, can I just say, I think that it's important, even when you have a case where you might think that the outcome is already pointing in a certain direction, it's really important to have a process, because you might have other cases that are more complex, and it's right to set the precedent as to how you're going to deal with disciplinary type issues when they arise.
Because precedent is important, isn't it? Because there are two other issues here that are coming down the pipe for the Prime Minister. There's the case of Dominic Raab for alleged bullying, something which he, of course, denies. There's the case of Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister, for misleading Parliament, something which he also denies. I mean, how can Rishi Sunak draw a line under his recent past? How can he end the shadow of long Boris over this government if he keeps being dogged by these allegations?
The issue concerning the Deputy Prime Minister is being investigated by Adam Tory, who's an employment lawyer. He's dealing with it independently and doing a thorough investigation, and then there will be an outcome in the same way that there was just last week. And then the issue concerning Boris Johnson is a parliamentary issue. That concerns the Privileges Committee. It has nothing to do with the Prime Minister.
I mean, Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister on the slimmest of mandates. He didn't get a mandate from the British public. He didn't get a mandate from the membership of the Tory party. He got a mandate from his fellow MPs. And I wonder if that means that he's afraid of sacking some of them when they deserve to be sacked.
I don't think that's true. And, one of the things that's got lost again and again in the last year is that this is a parliamentary democracy. So, in parliamentary terms, he has a mandate to be there. He's not somehow sort of a pretender to the throne. I don't accept that.
I didn't say that either. I'm just saying that in the perception of the public, of the electorate. And
well, look,
Boris Johnson
let me answer your point directly,
mandates.
because I think your question is he too weak to take action? But I don't think you've seen that. Just yesterday, he dismissed the party chairman, so he's not too weak to take action.
I guess the broader problem as well is that you've got these allegations that are being dealt with in the party, but the rest of it isn't going terribly well either, is it? The state of the economy, a landscape of industrial unrest. I mean, it's one issue after another. And one does get the impression, talking to members of your party, that you're sinking, frankly.
Well, look, it isn't in dispute that this is very difficult political terrain at the moment, and that's the case if you look at any comparable country in Europe or in the United States. For example, you mentioned strike action. Those are the same issues they're facing in France, the same issues they're facing in Italy, the same issues they're facing in the United States.
Not to the same extent. That is not true. It is much worse here. Inflation levels are worse here than they are in the rest of Europe or in the United States. We are an island, of relative misery when it comes to the problems that, on one level are global, but are particularly bad in this country.
Well, look, he's been in office for 100 days, and he's set out the 5 objectives that he's invited the public to judge him by, some of which by the end of the year. You can do that, Matt, but I think you've got to give him a chance to get to grip with some of these problems.
Laura Farris, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.